The Monday morning I lost my career, the woman who replaced me was sitting in my chair. Not beside it. Not across from it. In it. Her laptop was open on my desk. My coffee mug had been moved to the windowsill, and behind her, the glass walls still carried the strategy notes I'd written Friday afternoon. For 3 years, I had trained that woman. I defended her when senior executives said she wasn't ready. I brought her into meetings she wasn't invited to. I taught her how to negotiate, how to lead a room, and how to survive in a company where one mistake could follow you for years. Her name was Lauren Hayes. She was 32. And I genuinely believed that helping her succeed would become one of the proudest things I'd ever done. I was wrong, because while I was teaching Lauren how to build a career, she was quietly learning how to take mine. And what I discovered inside one forwarded email proved that this hadn't started that Monday. She had been preparing my downfall for months. My name is Rebecca Lawson. I was 57 years old, and I'd spent 26 years building my career at a Chicago consulting firm. I didn't inherit connections. I didn't marry into money. I started as an analyst with cheap shoes, a borrowed briefcase, and a habit of arriving before everyone else. By 57, I was Senior Vice President of Operations. More than 80 employees ultimately reported through my division. My work had become part of my identity. Then Lauren arrived. She was smart, ambitious, polished, and constantly underestimated. I understood that feeling. During one executive meeting, Lauren presented an idea that was dismissed almost immediately. 10 minutes later, a senior manager repeated nearly the same idea. Everyone loved it. I interrupted. Actually, that was Lauren's recommendation. The room became quiet. Lauren looked at me like nobody had ever done that for her before. Afterward, she caught me in the hallway. Why did you do that? Because it was your idea. That afternoon, she asked if I would mentor her. I said yes. And that one word eventually cost me almost everything. Lauren learned quickly. I began inviting her into senior meetings. When she stumbled during presentations, I coached her afterward instead of embarrassing her. When another executive called her too inexperienced for an important client account, I personally put my reputation behind her. Give her 6 months, I said. If she fails, blame me. She didn't fail. She flourished. Soon she was sitting beside me during budget meetings. I shared leadership strategies I'd spent decades learning. I even told her which executives valued directness and which ones needed diplomacy. Then came the personal conversations. That was my mistake. After 26 years at the company, I trusted very few people. But Lauren felt different. Sometimes after difficult meetings, we'd sit in my office with the door closed. I'd tell her things like, I think leadership is losing touch with the employees. Or, this restructuring plan worries me. Those weren't attacks. They were private conversations between a mentor and someone I trusted. Lauren would nod sympathetically. Sometimes she'd say, You can tell me anything, Rebecca. So I did. What I didn't know was that some of those conversations weren't staying in my office. About 6 months before I lost my position, the atmosphere around me changed. It happened slowly. Executives who normally called me for advice stopped calling. Meetings appeared on calendars without my name. Decisions affecting my department were made before I entered the room. Meanwhile, Lauren was everywhere. At first, I was proud. I thought it meant my mentoring was working. Then one Thursday, our CEO asked me a strange question. Rebecca, are you still committed to the direction this company is taking? I almost laughed. I've given 26 years to this company. Why would you ask me that? He smiled. No reason. Just checking. But there was a reason. I could feel it. That evening, Lauren came into my office. You okay? I told her what he'd asked. She frowned. That's strange. Then she leaned closer. Have you said anything recently that someone could misunderstand? I thought about it. No. Lauren smiled. Then don't worry. But as she walked out, something bothered me. She hadn't asked what the CEO meant. She had asked what I had said. The Friday before everything happened, Lauren and I worked late. Most of the floor was empty. At around 7:30, she stood in my doorway. You should go home. I'll finish the projections. I smiled. When did you become my boss? She laughed. Soon, hopefully. I laughed too. I actually laughed. Before leaving, I gave her access to the final presentation we'd been preparing for the board. It contained months of work, my strategy, my recommendations, my projections. I drove home that night feeling strangely peaceful. I remember thinking, Rebecca, you've finally trained someone who can carry this department when you're gone someday. Monday morning, at 8:12, my phone rang. Human Resources. Rebecca, could you come to the executive conference room? When I arrived, the CEO was sitting beside the head of HR. There was a folder on the table. Nobody offered me coffee. Nobody smiled. The CEO folded his hands. We're restructuring your position. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means your responsibilities are being reassigned. To whom? He didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. Through the glass wall behind him, I could see directly into my office. And Lauren was sitting in my chair. I walked out of that conference room carrying 26 years of loyalty inside a cardboard box. HR called it a leadership transition. I called it humiliation. Lauren was still in my office when I entered. She stood immediately. Rebecca. I looked at her. How long have you known? Her eyes dropped. Things moved really quickly. That sentence told me everything. Not I didn't know. Not I'm sorry. Things moved quickly. I placed my framed family photograph into the box. Then I noticed something. My Friday presentation was open on her laptop. Except my name wasn't on the title slide anymore. Hers was. Did you know Friday night? Silence. Lauren. Finally, she whispered. Yes. I felt something inside me go cold. You let me hand you my final presentation, knowing you were taking my position Monday morning? She tried to explain. I raised my hand. Don't. Then she said the sentence I still remember. I never wanted it to happen like this. I looked at her. Then how did you want it to happen? She had no answer. But the worst part hadn't happened yet. 2 weeks later, a former colleague named Daniel called me. He had worked in compliance for years. His voice sounded uncomfortable. Rebecca, there's something you need to see. We met at a quiet coffee shop. Daniel placed several printed pages on the table. They were email chains. Lauren's name appeared at the top. My stomach tightened. The first email had been sent nearly 8 months earlier. Lauren had written to a senior executive. Rebecca expressed serious concerns about leadership's ability to manage the upcoming restructuring. Technically, I had said something similar. Privately. To Lauren. Another email. Rebecca indicated she has lost confidence in several members of senior management. Again, based on a private conversation. Then another. And another. My frustrations had been stripped of context, rewritten professionally, and forwarded upward. For months, Lauren had been creating a version of me that management would eventually fear. Disloyal, negative, resistant to change. Then I reached the final page. It was dated 3 months before my dismissal. A senior executive had written, "If Rebecca's role becomes available, would you be prepared to step in?" Lauren's response was one sentence. I've been preparing for that opportunity. My hands started shaking. Not because she had taken my job. Because I finally understood. Every time she'd asked, "How are you really feeling?" Every sympathetic conversation. Every closed office door. She hadn't just been listening. She'd been collecting. I wanted to call Lauren immediately. Daniel stopped me. Keep reading. There was another attachment. Lauren had created a document titled, Leadership Transition Recommendations. The date? For months before I was removed. She had outlined which of my responsibilities she could assume, which clients already trusted her, which employees would support her, and which parts of my management style could be presented as resistant to modernization. Then I saw something that hurt more than everything else. One paragraph described me as an exceptional mentor whose historical contributions should be respected during transition. Historical contributions. I was 57 years old. I wasn't dead. I wasn't retired. I was still working 60-hour weeks. But the woman I'd trained was already writing about me in the past tense. I went home that night and opened an old notebook. Inside were pages of notes I'd written while mentoring Lauren.
Présentation technique.
negotiation strategies, leadership principles. Next to one entry, I'd written, Lauren could run this division someday. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I closed the notebook. She had become exactly what I'd prepared her to become. I simply hadn't realized she planned to become it while I was still sitting there. The next morning, I called Lauren. She answered on the third ring. Rebecca. I saw the emails. Silence. Then, I can explain. Good. Explain. She told me management had approached her first. She said executives were already concerned about me. She claimed she had only answered questions honestly. I listened. Then I asked, did I ever tell you that you could share our private conversations?
No.
Did you ever tell me management was asking about me?
No.
Did you know they were considering you for my job while I was still training you? Another silence. Yes. There it was. No excuse could change it. Then Lauren said, Rebecca, you taught me that nobody gives women opportunities. We have to take them. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. I taught you to advocate for yourself. I did.
No, Lauren.
You use trust as leverage. There's a difference. She became defensive. You had 26 years. I couldn't wait forever. That sentence ended something inside me. I wasn't speaking to my protege anymore. I was speaking to the person who had decided my career needed to end so hers could begin. Before hanging up, I said, I hope the chair was worth the person you became to sit in it. For several weeks, I felt lost. Then something unexpected happened. Clients started calling. Not the company.
Me.
One executive I'd worked with for 12 years said, We didn't stay because of the logo, Rebecca. We stayed because we trusted you. Another former client asked whether I was consulting independently. Then another. I realized something Lauren had never understood. She had inherited my title. She hadn't inherited my relationships. So, at 57, instead of retiring quietly, I started my own advisory firm. No giant office. No 80 employees. Just me, one assistant, and 26 years of experience. My first month was terrifying. My third was profitable. By the end of the first year, several major clients had moved their consulting work to my firm. Then Daniel called again. Have you heard about Lauren? I hadn't. The restructuring she'd helped support was failing. Employee turnover had increased. 2 major accounts had left. And senior management had started asking Lauren the same uncomfortable questions they once asked me. But this time, she didn't have anyone above her protecting her. Almost 18 months after that Monday morning, I received a message from Lauren. Rebecca, could we meet? Part of me wanted to ignore it, but I agreed. She walked into the restaurant looking different. Still polished. Still professional. But the confidence was gone. She told me she'd been removed from the executive position. Not fired. Reassigned. The company had brought in someone from outside. Lauren looked down at the table. I thought once I got your position, everything would finally make sense. And did it?
No.
Then she said something I never expected. I was so focused on getting your chair that I never asked why people trusted you enough to let you sit in it. For the first time, I saw genuine regret. She apologized. I accepted the apology. But forgiveness and access are 2 different things. Then she asked quietly, Do you think we could ever work together again? I looked at the woman I'd once defended in rooms she couldn't enter alone.
No, Lauren.
Her eyes filled, but she nodded. I continued, But I hope you build something better from what happened. She thanked me and left. I never saw her again. I'm 60 now. My company is smaller than the division I once managed. My office isn't on the 32nd floor. And nobody calls me senior vice president anymore. But every morning, I unlock a door with my own name on it. Losing that job taught me something 26 successful years never did. A title can be transferred overnight. A chair can be given to someone else. Even the career you thought was secure can disappear on a Monday morning. But experience? Relationships? Integrity? Those aren't transferred in an HR meeting. Lauren thought she had taken my career. For a while I thought so too. But she had only taken my position. And there is a difference. Because the strangest thing about betrayal is that sometimes the person trying to replace you forces you to discover that you were capable of building something they could never take. So, if you're mentoring someone, teach them everything you know. Open doors for people. Help younger people rise.
I still believe in that.
But never confuse kindness with blindness. Because I trained Lauren to become a leader. She taught me one final lesson in return. Be generous with your knowledge. Be careful with your trust. And never believe that the chair you're sitting in is the source of your value.